I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest for the next 25 or 30 or so minutes will be Mark Morial. Mark Morial is the president of the National Urban League since 2003. That's 25 years he served in this extraordinary capacity. He's been the primary catalyst for an era of change and transformation at the 100-plus-year-old civil rights organization. His energetic and skilled leadership has expanded the league's work around an empowerment agenda, redefining civil rights in the 21st century with a renewed emphasis on closing the economic gaps between whites and blacks and rich and poor Americans. Under President Morial's leadership, the National Urban League has had record fundraising success, establishing a National Urban League as the leading national nonprofit organization. He's also created the Urban League Empowerment Fund, which has pumped almost $200 million into urban impact businesses, including minority businesses, through debt and equity investments. During the COVID pandemic, President Morial led the Urban League in sounding the alarm about the racially disparate impact of burgeoning coronavirus attacks and the way in which it was impacting our community, and commencing an intense advocacy and direct relief program no later than to be called the Urban League Fights for You. President Morial, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Jesse, thank you for having me. And I would just want to say greetings to all of your listeners in Chicago and Los Angeles, and certainly to the leadership of WBON. I've had a great long-standing relationship with them. But hey, thanks for having me.
Mr. President, it's my pleasure. And Mark, you're my personal friend, but I am going to refer to you as Mr. President because it is a title that you've earned. And it is a title befitting of none other than the leadership that you provided nationally, but also in the city of New Orleans. I want to begin with the obvious. You had a great Super Bowl yesterday. You were once the mayor of the city of New Orleans. Can you share with our listeners the difficulty that confronts a city like New Orleans in putting on this kind of event? And I guess against the backdrop of what we saw just a few short weeks ago with a tragic event in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So New Orleans is really built for major events. It's 26,000 hotel rooms. It's a Superdome facility, the Morial Convention Center facility are second to none in terms of capacity and versatility. And the city is a very walkable city with a culture that literally oozes from everything. The music, the food, the spirit of the people. And it is a culture that has Black culture, African and Caribbean culture intertwined in it in an authentic way, but it's very New Orleans. A big game like this tests everything. But what happens with the Super Bowl, almost unlike any other event, is the mobilization that comes with the expertise of the National Football League, the local business, community, and political leaders. And then it's pretty impressive, the recruitment of literally tens of thousands of volunteers who want to be part of the game, who provide very important resources. And so with the tragedy, continuing prayers for those that lost their lives on New Year's Eve and early New Year's morning, the city had to double down. The mayor, the law enforcement team had to double down and reevaluate and, if you will, tighten up the security, particularly around the French Quarter, a very crowded place, but a very historic place, to try to ensure safety. As of this moment, I think the city can claim success and victory. And I also think it was great to see two African-American quarterbacks competing. A halftime show with Kendrick Lamar that was befitting of the best of hip hop, the best of Black culture and music. So I am just really excited. No one does a Super Bowl better than New Orleans. A lot of cities do a good job. New Orleans always does a great job. And not to mention what happened on the field. Like, I have always loved the Kansas City Chiefs, but yesterday I was a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Wow.
They deserved it. And they willed it, and they wanted it, and they outplayed Kansas City from the beginning until the end.
Your Honor, let me ask you this question. We have about a minute and 30 seconds before the break. African-American participation in an event of this magnitude, how does a person who was formerly in your position, but also as the president of the National Urban League, guarantee that in cities where we are majority minority, we actually get to play?
There's got to be a commitment up front by the host committee, by the city, and with the NFL. Look, 1997, we did the game here in New Orleans. I was mayor. It was the first time there was a specific initiative to include African-American business and community, and if you will, entertainment in a Super Bowl game. There's got to be a commitment up front, and you've got to find the ways in which African-American businesses can play. There's a tremendous amount of catering business. There's transportation services. There are production services, indeed, and the like. So the city has to be committed, but the leadership of the city has to insist on it and make it a part of the plan. It was very important to me in the two Super Bowls we did in the late 90s and the early 2000s. I think this time there was a considerable effort. I've not seen the results of that effort, but you gotta demand it and get a commitment up front.
There's no one better to discuss these issues than the former mayor of New Orleans and the president of the National Urban League. When we come forward, Mark Morial will discuss the present administration and the challenges confronting African Americans in this era of resistance. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a dream today.
From slavery and segregation to the Great Migration to our present day rising, the Black experience in America is a story of resilience, achievement, and unstoppable spirit. This February, we're curating amazing conversations celebrating the heroes, the pioneers, and the everyday people who made history. Black History Month on KBLA Talk 1580. Together, we carry the torch forward.
Can your pad absorb everything and stay fresh? Always Radiant with Flex Foam can. Get up to 0 leaks, 0 odor, and 0 feel, because Flex Foam is the only pad with a flexible foam core. You heard me, foam. Always Radiant is so thin, it feels like nothing, yet protects like nothing else. Can your pad do that? For up to 100% leak-free protection, try Always Radiant to see what Flex Foam can do for you.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Every morning, we rise and shine, make breakfast, and brush away the night's rest. These routines help us start the day off right. Nature-Made vitamins are a simple step in that daily care regimen. Multivitamins with daily essentials, clinically studied probiotics for gut health support, magnesium to help relax the body. Nature-Made is made to care for you every day. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is Jesse Jackson Jr., and welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is the national president of the National Urban League, President Mark Morial. Mr. President, thank you once again for being our special guest.
Appreciate you, Jesse. Thank you.
Mr. President, we're all stunned. I mean, the civil rights community, the civil rights organizations, the human rights community, the human rights organizations, the women organizations, we're stunned by the speed with which President Donald Trump has issued executive orders, the speed with which Elon Musk and others have entered federal agencies without congressional approval. And we know that the Urban League has played a significant role in defending our human rights over time through the courts and through the law. I'm wondering how the agenda of the National Urban League going forward, in light of this clear attack on our basic civil rights and civil liberties, are being affected, and what your plan is. I'm asking this very humbly because you are one of our nation's leaders.
It's an important question, and we are challenged and must step up to meet the moment. But let me tell you what the moment is.
Yes, sir.
It's an assault on 70 years of progress.
Mm.
Since Brown v. Board, May 17, 1954, Rosa Parks, Little Rock, Albany, Georgia, Birmingham, the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 64, the War on Poverty, Fair Housing, this continuum which bent the moral arc towards justice in this country, and changed America and opened pathways for Black people and women and Latinos and Asians and LGBTQ and the disabled Americans, opened the doors for some dignity and some respect, not perfection, not yet parity. There's an assault on this. It's a full-bodied, full-throated assault. It's being animated by a white nationalist, a white supremacy movement and attitude. And its early device has been the use of executive orders that in many respects are unlawful because they seek to do by executive action, which can only be done by congressional action or constitutional amendment. This is why there have been more than 25 lawsuits filed against a wide range of executive orders, and why in the short run, the judicial system, the third branch of government, as a lawyer, back to Marbury versus Madison, the adjudicator of the meaning of the Constitution, the check on the legislative branch and on the executive branch, since it's apparent that the legislative branch, the majority is not inclined to check the executive branch. This is the moment that we're in. We have to step up because, and I've said this to the Urban League leaders, followers, we will not surrender our mission. We will not surrender our values. And that's why we put a lot of energy in convening civil rights organizations, not only historic African-American civil rights organizations, but from other communities as well, to really try to coordinate, work together, share information on this resistance movement. There's litigation, there's protests, there are economic strategies being undertaken. There's people using their voices. There are now federal employees who are marching. There's a major march tomorrow, major protest tomorrow by federal employees protesting against these blunt tactics, these illegal and unlawful tactics that are, if you look at the attack on DE&I, it is a racially motivated attack under the rubric of DE&I. So we need voices like yours to help people understand. I think the shock and the stun is that we've had an uneasy consensus for 70 years with pushback and go forward around the idea of racial justice and moving the nation. Now that consensus, you have a wing on the right that says, damn that, we're going to push back. So the National Urban League movement, make no mistake about it, we have to step up. We are reviewing today litigation options. We will use our voice, our convening, and our coalition power to continue to work. We are in full engagement with many, many private sector partners, encouraging many to stick with DE&I, stick with their commitment to racial justice. You've seen a Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase. You've seen a Roger Goodell of the National Football League. You've seen several others make strong statements. We are in those conversations with them behind the scenes, encouraging that we cannot fight this battle by ourselves, but we must play a central leadership role. So as to what people can do, voice by social media, by telephone calls to the congressional switchboard, to those corporations that you buy from and purchase from, that you want them to remain committed to economic opportunity and DE&I. We've got to have grassroots voices and grassroots activation around this. And that means doing things that are protected by the Constitution. Our voice is protected. Our right to assemble is protected. Our right to petition the courts is protected. And we need everyone. This is a long fight. There are no first round knockout punches, because never before have we seen a president of the United States, not Reagan, not Bush, not Nixon, pull the full weight of his power behind a movement to unravel civil rights, unravel the progress that we made. And I can see it no other way than to see it as I see it, and I know you see it. Both of our families have been intimately involved in this work going all the way back to the 50s. And we're progenitors of that work. And it falls to us in this generation to run with the baton. And we have to understand the responsibilities we have to do it. And so the Urban League movement, I think, is going to be strong and resolute. We're going to do what we do best. We're going to convene. We're looking at litigation options. We're going to continue to try to run our programs in communities, reentry, youth programs, workforce. We're going to use and utilize fully our access and relationships with those private sector partners that we have partnerships with, to encourage them and be very real about their need to continue their commitments. It's a commitment, Jesse, to economic opportunity. DE&I may be the program, but this is what the American Constitution is all about: economic opportunity and access for everyone to the American dream. And I want people to understand that DE&I and merit go hand in hand. DE&I basically said, let's give everyone with merit a chance. Look at those two quarterbacks who started in the Super Bowl yesterday. Now, second time in history, two black quarterbacks meet the Super Bowl. But do you believe that they're the only men in the history of the NFL qualified to play quarterback in a Super Bowl game? No. It took tremendous work and advocacy to crack open those doors, from the Doug Williams days, the Shaq Harris days, the Marlon Briscoe days, the Warren Moon days. And so we got to understand, yesterday was a showcase of the power of economic opportunity, the power of DE&I, that gives everyone with merit a shot. That's what it does. We've never had a preference on anything. All we ever had, all we ever asked for was a shot, a fair shot.
Let me just add, Mr. President, because, again, we just have a few moments before we lose you because of your extraordinarily busy schedule. It just seems to me that whatever we can do to elevate your platform, to articulate the message that you just articulated, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, whatever the mediums are, that our voices are really at this level not new. They are seasoned, they are clear, they have been supported by millions of our people, both in the coalition and specifically African Americans who have been fighting for our fair share. And just no one of the leaders that I've had on this program have articulated with the clarity that you've articulated, even using the analogy of the Super Bowl itself. I think today I heard on our program that for other chief executive officers of major municipalities, that before the big event shows up in town, there is an understanding on our participation in the big events. And that is the very thoughtful and very clear leadership of Mark Morial, the president of the National Urban League. Mr. President, let me ask you just a final question as we begin to wrap up our interview, understanding that you have some other things to do. There is talk, as you can see, without controlling Congress, without having control in the Senate, and recognizing that your organization and many of our organizations are nonpartisan organizations, that we have a tax status that keeps us in that position. The fact of the matter is that an overwhelming number of African Americans find themselves in the Democratic Party. And with that said, to be a representative organization, you find yourself advocating for those positions. Is there any way, Mr. President, that you see an ability to work with Republicans and conservatives on the questions of equity, equality, diversity, and inclusion?
If people meet us in the middle, meet us at the table of discussion, the answer is always going to be yes, right? If it becomes a rhetorical pie throwing contest, then, or if it becomes what I call the performance artistry and the illusion of cooperation or the illusion of working together, then obviously there'll be another answer. In the first Trump term, because of Jared Kushner, Cory Booker, Hakeem Jeffries, Cedric Richmond, Van Jones, and myself were heavily engaged in the passage of the First Step Act. And while the Trump team took a lot of credit for it, Jared was key to it. It was a Jeffries Richmond bill in the House and a Booker bill in the Senate that ended up becoming law. Others added and joined. That was an example. That First Step Act did not do everything we wanted it to do, but it did some material things and created an opportunity. So we'll never shut the door on working with anyone as long as it's a sincere conversation. And I think that what we need to understand about DE&I, it's good for the economy. We're competing with China. We're competing with India. We're competing globally. We need all the talent in the game, all the talent fully developed. And then we also need to understand the spending power of African Americans nears $2 trillion. For Latinos, it's 2+. You add the Asian spending power in, and you're in the 5 trillion range. We have consumer power. And then the younger consumers in their teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s are decidedly much more communities of color. Smart business people should understand the economic proposition behind this and not be tricked into being intimidated by this movement of division and supremacy that we see.
Mr. President, I can't thank you enough for your time. We're honored that the president of the National Urban League, President Mark Morial, has joined us. Mr. President, you are welcomed at any time.
We'll come
on the
back
Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
We'll
I look forward to it.
Thank you
very much. My very best to your staff that was kind enough to make your appearance today possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our very special guest in this half an hour was the president of the National Urban League, who for more than 25 years, and it's hard to believe because President Morial looks like he's about 25 years old. He's in great shape, great spirit, energy, takes care of himself, and has been one of the top civil rights leaders in the entire nation. He shared with you today with great clarity, one, the roles that mayors play in guaranteeing and ensuring that our contracting for big events matters. He's hosted 2 Super Bowls himself. Beyond the Eagles and the Chief, there is the business of the Super Bowl. These are billion-dollar weekends. These are billions of dollar weekends that lead up to the billion-dollar weekend. And Mark Morial, just no one has hosted more Super Bowls as an African-American mayor than Mark Morial. He's the best at it. And I want to thank our program director who insisted that the mayor address some of these questions about African-American diversity, equity, and inclusion participation in these big events. And he also shared with us the nature of the resistance with great clarity. It is his great clarity that those of us who are on talk shows, those of us who are talking heads, lean on because of the extraordinary research power of the National Urban League. No other civil rights organization has the research capacity that Mark Morial has put in place at the National Urban League in almost every facet of African American life. This organization for the last 100 years, along with other African American civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the National Action Network under Reverend Al Sharpton, have been largely responsible for defending the middle class, whether it be against Democrats or Republicans, whenever our interests are at stake. When we come forward, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We will continue to opine about the thoughts of the president of the Urban League.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A judge is blocking the Trump administration from sending 3 Venezuelan migrants to Guantanamo Bay. The migrants held in New Mexico raised concerns after similar transfers began. Leaked documents say ICE plans a large-scale immigration crackdown in Los Angeles before February ends. While enforcement has increased nationwide, LA has not seen major action yet. Protests continue against Trump's mass deportation strategy. Tiger Woods is withdrawing from the PGA event he hosts in California as he mourns his mother's passing. He said on X he planned to play, but is not ready. Woods still hopes to attend the Genesis Invitational later this week and thanked his fans for their support. And Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bassett's wildfire recovery czar, Steve Soboroff, will now work for free after backlash over his $500,000 salary for 90 days. His pay was originally set to come from charities. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Anthony Davis's injury troubles have followed him to Dallas. The former Lakers star will be out at least a month with a strained abductor muscle. AD was hurt in his debut game with the Mavericks on Saturday against Houston. Before suffering the injury in the third quarter, AD was torching Houston in his first game in front of Mavericks fans. 26 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 block shots. Mavericks fans, angered by the trade that sent Luka Doncic to the Lakers, will have to wait a while to see if AD can ease the pain of losing Doncic. A future star in women's gymnastics is coming from an HBCU school. Morgan Price, a junior at Fisk University in Nashville, became the first HBCU gymnast to earn a perfect 10 in NCAA competition. Judges gave Price a 10 for her performance on the uneven bars in a meet Saturday at Temple University. Price also won the all-around competition in the meet at Temple. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a dream today.
The road to freedom wasn't paved with just big moments. It was built day to day, step by step, voice by voice. This February, experience Black History Month through the stories that shaped Los Angeles and beyond. KBLA Talk 1580, where Black history lives. Are you a recent college graduate with a dream of getting a high-paying job in sales? A job where you can grow a lucrative career in multi-platform audio, digital, podcasts, social media, and local events, along with world-class training and career growth opportunities. KBLA Talk 1580, located in historic Leimert Park, is currently hiring entry-level account executives for outside sales. Join a team featuring radio hosts Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornell West, Jesse Jackson Jr., D.L. Hughley, Dr. Nee Cordelai Corte, Zoe Williams, and our very own Dominique DePrima. For more information on attending our upcoming career fair, contact SMB at KBLA1580.com today.
Work, 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 work.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Really grateful to have the national president of the Urban League, Mark Morial, as our guest in the last half hour. As you can imagine, he's one of the busiest men in America, responding on a daily, if not hourly, if not minute-by-minute basis to everything that is being thrown in our direction with the implications of the executive orders being offered by the President of the United States, Donald John Trump. We had just a brief conversation about what it meant to be the mayor of a major municipality. Mark Morial was the mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana. He has hosted 2 Super Bowls, and he talked about some of the guarantees, some of the obligations that he had as an African-American mayor to ensure local participation in the major events that come to the city of New Orleans. He said his city was made to host international events. And without African-American mayoral leadership, it's just impossible to ensure our fair share. He said all of these details have to be worked out with the National Football League, with the major sponsors, with city services and various heads of agencies within the city, with local contracting and the hotels and the entire tourism industry before the event shows up in town. That requires a personal commitment and understanding of the history of leaving female-owned businesses out. It means that the mayor must have a sensitivity to the idea that African-American small businesses should be participating at every level of a major event. Catering, transportation, hotels, The time that we spend participating in the economy of a local municipality must be coordinated with a major event when it shows up so that we can expand, strengthen the middle class within our municipalities. I heard that not only from the national president of the Urban League, who for more than 25 years has dedicated, I think, the bulk of his life to the service of Black people. When you consider his terms as mayor of the city of New Orleans, when you consider the 25 years that he has served as the national president of the National Urban League. I mean, Mark looks like he's 25 years old, but I can imagine that he's certainly under 70, which means that at least 30 years of his life, like his father before him, the late Honorable Dutch Morial, whose leadership for decades led the people of New Orleans and the people of the state of Louisiana to an inclusive state that gave consideration to its citizens, African American citizens who lived throughout the state. It's female and women-owned businesses fighting for their human rights within the state of Louisiana. It's hard to even calculate, from the state Supreme Court to the local judiciary to local offices across the state, that the impact of the lives of African Americans have been greatly enhanced and improved by the Morial family. We can't just limit them to a city. Mark Morial is the national president of an organization that is and boasts of chapters in all 50 states, in hundreds of cities around our country, thousands of counties, tens of thousands of members of the organization who follow the leadership of their president. One of the things that he said was they've been working behind the scenes. He shared with us some of the people that he's worked with behind the scenes to advance the First Step Act. I'd like a voice like Mark Morial's to be, well, I need him to work behind the scenes, but we need him on CNN. We need him on MSNBC. We need reporters from the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times to call the National Urban League and ask for the opinion of someone who is informed about the issues confronting our nation under the leadership of the 47th President of the United States. Not everybody talking knows what they're talking about. Not every Black face, male or female, comes close to the knowledge that President Mark Morial has from 1619 to the present on the condition and the challenges that confront our nation, not just Black people, but our nation from the perspective of Black people. There's some young, some beautiful, and very intelligent people who are speaking and hold television shows on these various networks, but they don't have the knowledge of Mark Morial. They've never been engaged in these struggles for participation. They've never been inside of a courtroom. They've never seen and experienced the struggle from a picket line, from an advocacy position challenging major corporations to consider African American male and females, LGBTQ, Hispanics, to join corporate boards. No one has that knowledge quite like President Mark Morial. And yet, I've not seen Mark Morial in the mornings on MSNBC. How do you explain that? I'm not just talking about the professors at Princeton, the professors at Harvard, the professors at Yale. I get it. These are well-studied men and women who've gotten degrees. But Mark Morial is out here in these streets. He's out here with Reverend Sharpton. They in these streets and Derek Johnson, they out here in these streets. And when my father was capable and able, he was out here in these streets. The street committee. And if Joe Biden had heard from the street committee, I am aware of people, for example, that Al Sharpton wanted to see forgiven and pardoned, and Derek Johnson wanted to see forgiven and pardoned, and Mark Morial wanted to see forgiven and pardoned, but they had no access to Joe Biden. They have limited access to Donald John Trump. They have even less access if they're not on the news. And if the so-called experts, the filters by which we hear our stories, do not include their points of views, that's particularly problematic and troubling. Mark Morial, the national president of the Urban League, a voice that we need to bring forward. We're going to do everything we can on the Jesse Jackson Jr. show to bring his voice forward, and other leaders who need to be heard because they represent the highest and best, not only of quarterbacks on the field for Philadelphia and for the Kansas City Chiefs, but they are the best and brightest in our nation, and they speak for us. We honor them during this Black History Month. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. show. When we come forward, I will opine about what the president is.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Time is up. The IRS is in full collection mode for 2024, issuing liens, levies, and garnishments to anyone who has a past tax debt or unfiled tax returns. Don't wait till it's too late. Your paycheck and bank accounts are at risk of being seized. Call now and stop the collection process today. If you're living check to check, no matter how much you're making, you still may qualify for the Fresh Start programs offered by the IRS to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. It's just a 5-minute call to get your options, and it's free. If you owe back taxes, have years of unfiled tax returns, under audit, have a wage or bank levy, or finally just want to sleep better, business or personal, call the experts at Republic Tax Relief while there's still time. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and tough. This veteran-owned company has the fight you need to take on the IRS. Don't go at it alone. The call is free. Call their hotline number now, 800-652-1714. That's 800-652-1714. Find out if you qualify today. Call 800-652-1714 or go to republictaxrelief.com.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
After you use Bounce Dryer sheets and realize how fresh, soft, less wrinkled, and less staticky your laundry can be, you'll every time. Like those socks that smell like they've been through a marathon. Or that blanket that's got wrinkles on its wrinkles. Maybe even your chatty coworker who keeps distracting you. Okay, Bounce Dryer sheets can't do it all. But for fresher, softer, better laundry...
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It doesn't get much better than that. I'm not asking you to be the leader that Mark Morial is, or that Reverend Al Sharpton is, or Derek Johnson is, or that my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, is. What I'm asking you to do is to support these men, these women at the National Council of Negro Women. You ought to Google their organizations. You ought to become a member. $25, $50, $100. Sustain these organizations that are engaged in the fight. No one's asking you to go to court every day and fight for our civil rights. Let Mark Morial do that. But be the wind beneath his wings. Let Al Sharpton do that. We do need to join Reverend Sharpton on some of these picket lines, and after their 90 days of research, we need to support the boycotts that he's organizing. But in the meantime, we can join the National Action Network so that we can support the research necessary to determine who those corporate entities are that are against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ain't nobody asking you to do that in the barbershop. Ain't nobody asking you to do that in the beauty shop. Let them do it. But the least you can do is dedicate a haircut or two to supporting these organizations every single month. Some of these organizations, some of their programs, under sensitive Democratic administrations who recognize the needs of our communities, have set up programs that the government itself said, because the Urban League is in 37 states, because it's in 300 communities around our country, because it is a not-for-profit organization, they can receive government funding to do certain work in the communities that we ourselves are not doing. These organizations are working particularly hard to build a more perfect union. Its leadership is under the leadership of Mark Morial, of Reverend Al Sharpton, of Derek Johnson, of Reverend Jesse Jackson, of the leadership at the National Council of Negro Women, the leadership of Barbara Arnwine, the leadership of Reverend William Barber. These organizations do the work. And we should support these organizations. I wish I had a list of names and phone numbers to give you on our national airtime, but my goal is to have all of them come on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and find commonality on the questions of resistance. How do we do it? How do we come together and strengthen each other? Some of the problems that we are experiencing emotionally and mentally in our community is some of us individually are trying to find a way to do something about everything we're going through by themselves. You can't. You need community. You need to be in community with other like-minded people. Some will be Black. Some will be white. Some will be straight. Some will be gay. Some will be male. Some will be female. They will represent different walks of life, but there is commonality in struggle. And when we're all in the congregation together, something special happens. James Baldwin once interviewed Martin Luther King Jr. when he was preaching in Birmingham, Alabama, and in Montgomery. And he said he wanted to figure out what made Martin so different. Was it that he could preach? Baldwin said, well, he can certainly do that, but from his perspective, that's not what made Dr. King different. Was it that he could lead a crowd command an audience and speak to the media. He said, well, Dr. King could do that. But that wasn't what made him so great. Baldwin contends. Baldwin raised the question that Dr. King could do many things scholastically and academically and theologically and spiritually and philosophically that others could and could not do. But was that what made him great? Baldwin said, no. He said what made Dr. King great was that he understood the suffering of his congregation. He understood the suffering of the people that he sought to lead. And he shared with the people that he sought to lead his own suffering. And once the people understood that he understood their suffering and that he too was participating in their suffering, that he wasn't a preacher preaching to their suffering and that the suffering were suffering and he wasn't suffering, he wanted them to understand that he too was engaged in the exact same suffering that they were engaged in. And he said, James Baldwin said, what made Dr. King so unique, that there was an agreement reached at the level of spirit that we are going to work our way out of suffering together. Dr. King isn't going to be someone outside of suffering, and the congregation wasn't going to be outside of suffering all by themselves. He was going to be in suffering with them, and our common agreement would be that we're going to move through this period of suffering together. And therefore, the congregation was never alone. Dr. King was never alone. And they suffered together. Suffering leadership. Not social media leadership. Not TikTok leadership. Not points of view leadership. Everybody got an opinion and everybody got a talking head. Everybody. Suffering leadership. Who amongst us will suffer the most? I think in a real sense, that's the story of the gospel, of the 4 books when synthesized and synchronized into a single account from birth to crucifixion. I think that Jesus of Nazareth decides that he's not going to organize people based upon race or based upon class or based upon their color or even their religion. I think he decided to go around the Sea of Galilee, organizing people around their suffering. And when he shared their suffering and experienced their suffering, he became their suffering. And his leadership wasn't separate and apart from their suffering. And his final act was to demonstrate his capacity to suffer. And for more than 2,000 years, we have followed his suffering. And through that suffering, he persisted. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Love them. Love your neighbor as yourself, regardless of what they say about us or do to us. We move forward together. My father says it this way: red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and you've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A judge is blocking the Trump administration from sending 3 Venezuelan migrants to Guantanamo Bay. The migrants held in New Mexico raised concerns after similar transfers began. Leaked documents say ICE plans a large-scale immigration crackdown in Los Angeles before February ends. While enforcement has increased nationwide, LA has not seen major action yet. Protests continue against Trump's